good evening or morning or afternoon stats whenever you watch this video. Welcome to your AMI video. Today, I wanted to go over two different, or just the example that we didn't get through in class today. Now, going forward, I'm not going to use the calculator unless I know explicitly that it's going to make our lives a lot easier. Today is a lot more confusing than just doing the histogram by hand, honestly. In all opinion, I just wanted to flex how much the calculators can do. So there's very specific circumstances where the calculators become so handy. And when we get to those, I'll go through them in a little bit more detail. But beside the point, let's go over the cumulative relative frequency example. And it's in the notes number 2. It's the one about the president's ages at inauguration. Now, most of the time, we can abbreviate it as OGIV. Now, why that is, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. However, what I do know is how useful it can be, especially if you're looking at standardized data, which we'll get to normal distributions later on. And those become really very, very handy when you're talking about percentiles and stuff, which is some examples we'll go through. If you can't read my handwriting, these are the ages. So 40 to 45, 45 to 50, 50 to 55, so on and so forth, all the way until 75 to 80. And this is all the way up until Biden was elected. So he was the oldest. So he made us have an extra one over here. How dare he? Beside the point, I don't even know if this counts Grover Cleveland, because he was inaugurated twice, but not consecutive terms. So that's an interesting question, because he was different ages, obviously, when he was anyway, I'm getting off track. The frequency, so how many that there are in each of those categories. So 2 for 40 to 45, which I think was Teddy and JFK, if you're curious. Let's talk about the relative frequency. Relative frequency would be however much there are divided by the total amount. So there's 2 in this category, divide that by 46. You should end up with about 4%. Rounding wise, we'll get to, it might be a little bit tougher and more specific about it, but that was the worst way I could have ever written that number. So let's rewrite this. 4%. Going through the table, filling out the rest. So 7 over 46 is about 15%. And then you have 28% here in the 50 to 55 category, 26% in the 55 to 60 category, 15%, 7%, 2%, and 2%. Now in this bottom category, it's the cumulative relative frequency. I could not abbreviate it any other way because I was running out of room on my chalkboard. So, sorry. But the cumulative relative frequency, cumulative being accumulate throughout all of them. So that means sum up all the previous percentages before that. So here we have no percentages before it, so it's just going to be 4. Now, here, since we had 4 before, and we have 15 here, you do 15 plus 4, meaning 19. So this is accumulating over time, or as we go. So then you got 28 plus 19, which is 47. And ideally, 73, once you get to the end, you should end up with 100. But in this very specific circumstance, you don't. You get 99%. Interesting, isn't it? Well, that's because rounding is a thing. And if you were to go to the last decimal place, which these are infinitely repeating decimals, they're irrational, or they are rational technically, then hypothetically, theoretically, we get to 100. But life isn't perfect. Neither am I. Kind of. Now, as we're going on, there's going to be 2 questions I posed throughout the video. Here's question 1 that you have to answer on your Google form. So question 1, it's going to be, what? Shoot, hang on. Let me think of a really good question. what type of animal gets overlooked on the coolness scale? So in my opinion, I know I'm biased, but I think frogs have a really cool aspect to them that not a lot of people look at. So frogs are mine. So that's question number one, is what animal gets overlooked on the coolness scale? Answer that in the Google form. Question 2 will be coming in later in this video. So now, going on, we are going to make a plot of this, meaning that we are going to have the cumulative relative frequency on the y-axis and the age gaps over here on the x-axis. So how are we going to do this? Well, starting at 40, you ain't got anybody there, do we? So we're going to make it all the way. Well, actually, in this age gap right here, we'll start at 0, or about 4%, right? Because we got 4, it's close to 0. Once we get to 45, on the other hand, it's going to go all the way up to almost 20. And it's going to be kind of a line graph almost. Not quite, though. Going to 50. Looks like I may have messed up on the notes here. Interesting. I don't know how to approach this then. Yeah, looks like they did totally mess this up. Well, that's fun. Anyway, it should look something like this. We got 47% right at the 55 mark, or right at the 50 mark, going all the way up to the 73% at the 55. That's when it first starts reaching that. Yeah, they totally messed that up. Well, that's embarrassing on their part. Well, I mean, they got a lot of other stuff too that they're worrying about. So here we are, going up to the 88% mark at 65 or 60. And then at 95, you got all the way up to 65. Then it gets closer to 100. So somewhere around there. Now there's 2 follow-up questions that they have for us right after. At approximately what age is the 30th percentile? What does this mean in the context of the problem? So let's go about to the 30th percentile, so about right here, and kind of trace it. Depending on how your graph looks and whether or not it's up to code and there, mine looks a little bit meh. It could have used a little bit more work here, but regardless, mine looks like it's about 47 years old. Well, why is that? Well, I totally did probably mess this up actually a little bit more. But there, they said it's about 52. So their graph is slightly different than mine. But regardless, they got 52 as their answer. But what does that mean in the context of the question? Well, that means that approximately 30% of the presidents inaugurated were less than 52 years old. Meaning if you're inaugurated at 52 years old, that means you're older than 30% of the presidents that have been inaugurated at that age. Next up is the Richard Nixon one. Richard Nixon was the 37th president and was 56 years old when he was inaugurated. Approximately, what percentile is this? Now, like I said, actually mine's like right on. If you look at it, 56 is about at the 70th percentile. So 70th percentile. And what does that mean in the context of the question? Well, that means that he was older than 70% of the presidents that have been inaugurated at that time too. And that's also just handy and useful for just a first glance. That's what the purpose of this whole entire graphic is. And we're approximating it to be linear. And actually there's an easier way to do it with linear regression once we get to that stage, but I don't want to ramble on for too much. But you also have another question to answer for me. It's the most important question of the 2. So question number 2 in your Google form. I'd be slacking on the stat of the days. So I totally missed last Friday and today because we were pressed for time and I had other stuff to go through. So I want you to Google some statistics. Don't Google like weird or cool mind-blowing statistics because you're all going to get the same ones. And make sure they're school appropriate. So this is going to be your quest, is the stat of the day. So put a interesting statistic that you find in your research just by researching random statistical facts or about whatever topic you're interested in right now. Like for me, I am interested in music for guitar, so I'll be looking at statistics about guitarists or something like that. And let me know your findings or how interesting you find it. So cool. If you have any questions, email me. I'll be available. So take care, and I will see you when we get back.